Viral footage coming out of Vulhedar has been a tremendous embarrassment for the Russian military. So much so that even pro-Russian mill bloggers are dragging the Russian Ministry of Defense for letting this happen. And we are going to be breaking down, well, as much of the footage as YouTube will let us right now. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let's give you guys some context. The most important context is that if the whole thing, I've done the whole video breakdown on my Patreon, and I actually broke it down before it went viral. And we talked about all the things about this that make it embarrassing. So if you want to become a member of the channel, help support it, because there's almost no way YouTube is going to let me monetize this video. The link's in the description. But we can get some of the highlights that don't include any of the things that'll get me demonetized. Hi, YouTube censor. Don't worry. I've removed everything bad. This is just going to be some people walking around. But let's talk about the context. So right here is a disabled tank. Its crew looks okay. It doesn't look destroyed. It just looks like the track has been taken out. And it's been taken out by a mine. This is important information. There was a tank column. It was advancing along this route here. You can see the literally big dark lines in the snow showing where tanks have gone, which indicates that that's safe. If one tank drove over the area, then the subsequent tanks that follow it will be fine. And they know for a fact that there are anti-tank mines in the other areas of the field. So in a way, this is actually one of the safest ways to traverse a minefield. But this vehicle, for reasons, the reason's unknown. The reason is the crew is not that well trained and the command is not that well informed. This crew went off of this mine path, or this cleared path, and struck an anti-tank mine. Now, the crew has to be recovered. So let's take a look here where we're going now. All right, so let's see. I'll back it up just a little bit, see if we can get a little more context. Okay, so right here, what happened is this tank has pulled up alongside it, and this tank crew is trying to do the right thing because they are right alongside the disabled tank. This is going to let their crew or infantry, like these guys, get into the tank, make sure the crew of the damaged tank can get out safely. It'll let them assess the tank for damage, remove things like radios or maps, and get them into the other tank. They can also size up the tank and say, hey, how damaged is it? Can we actually tow it back? And if we can prepare it for towing, and this can tow it. And you see here, these two tanks have created a little trench line. Plus, here's a third tank that is providing covering fire. It's watching out as its recovery takes place. Everything is going fine. As you can see, this tank is sort of pushing out, right, getting a little extra distance, which is not a wrong call. But wait, something's wrong. This recovery is not going well. As you can see, the troops, this is sped up obviously, are beginning to run off. Instead of helping the disabled tank and extract the crews, these guys are just taking off running, abandoning the soldiers who are trying to do the right thing. And to make matters worse, this tank here is attempting to turn around, which not necessary. These tanks can go in reverse, and even a good tank driver can basically turn their tank around and never leave this track at all. And you can see now it's driving in the exact same area that this vehicle hit a mine. It's making the same mistake. And all the while, look at the number of soldiers who are fleeing. No formation, no security. And you can see, you would know if they were trying to, let's say, extract a heavily wounded comrade, but they're not. They're all ambulatory. They're just taking off running. And you feel bad. And look at this vehicle here. Again, it's sped up. Understand that. But this vehicle is actually trying to drive. And just look. But the crews can't operate it. This vehicle hasn't been damaged. If for those of you that, again, the Patreon has the whole thing that really breaks it down. But this vehicle has not been damaged. And it seems like, look, another member of this tank crew just ditched the tank. Like, what? Like, look, that's a tank. This isn't an infantry fighting vehicle. That's just a crew member that just ditched. And 2 more individuals just took off running. You can see this is the sort of problem. Okay, we can't do more than this. Again, do you see what's happening? This is panic, and it's panic that's spreading. And this is what happens when you have a couple of training failures come together, and leadership failures, but mostly training failures. So one is that no one seems to know what they should do in response to this situation. Something that is an easy scenario to train, which is one of the vehicles in your convoy becomes disabled. We must have done 15 of these before we ever deployed. And we also had it happen when we were deployed all the time. It's a very protocolized process. Second, you have to, the panic that the individual soldiers feel is a reflection of the fact that, 1, they don't know what to do. 2, they aren't confident that they can do it quickly, right? That's the other thing, is the reason we did it 15 times, that by the time we had to do it in actual combat situations, we could figure it out, right? No 2 vehicle breakdowns or vehicle stuck positions were the same, but they were almost always solvable. And even if it meant you had to call a wrecker, which happened all the stinking time. But the point is that we had these protocols down, and we knew what we were doing. We were also, individual soldiers were trained so that everyone knew what their role was. Because when you don't know what your role is, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, or you don't have the ability to do it, then, and this was actually a flaw in the U.S. military's protocols, because we signed for MRAP vehicles that we had never been trained on. So in a lot of cases, we actually didn't know how to recover the MRAPs. But here's the key. We were still a trained, coherent unit that worked together, so that when we encountered a technical problem we couldn't solve, we weren't going to just be like, well, too bad, buddy, it's someone else's problem. No, it's the unit's problem. It's the platoon's problem. It's the patrol's problem. And that's how we would approach everything. You're never going to ditch part of your patrol because there's some technical problem with the vehicles. We would figure it out. We always figured it out. And that is a core training failure. When you have different people with limited skill sets, especially confronting a problem, you need to have leadership and you need to have unit cohesion. That's what you get to rely on when you're stuck in a situation like these guys were, where again, they go, oh, I can't operate. We don't know how to operate the vehicle. We don't know how to do recovery. The tank crew in front of us doesn't know what they're doing. And we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And no one appears to be in charge. That's when you have panic start to occur. And once you see half your squad run off, you look around, you're like, what am I still doing here? I'm in the vulnerable spot. I'm the one who's about to get hit with artillery. Meanwhile, everyone else in my unit has just up and left. And that's when you say, F this, and you start running. And then that's how panic spreads through a unit. So the Russian Millblogger community is dunking on this as a failure of the unit, a failure of the command, and that's partially true, right? Command is only going to assign missions that troops can accomplish, and this is an extremely routine mission. This is something you would expect. This is something you would expect on like on the way to a training area on a military base. A vehicle breaks down and you have to recover it. This is standard stuff. So the fact that they can't do this means that they're not really mission capable in any way. But you only assign your troops missions they can handle. And if you have troops who are not adequately up to mission, you have to train them. That's it. Even in deployment. it was a normal occurrence for us, because we worked so hard to train junior soldiers to work in the next rank, because you're never more than one bad day away from losing a team leader, a squad leader, a platoon sergeant, a PL. Everybody had to have resilience in these systems. And so we made it a point. We were like, yeah, every specialist should be ready to run their team. Every corporal should be ready to run a squad. And so it would be routine to have them practice giving mission briefs. Corporals would oftentimes help or draft post-patrol reports to understand how squad leaders were expected to think about a patrol and what the goals and what the deliverables were on it. Obviously, all of those things are checked by me and the squad leader. But the point is that when you have situations like this, where the leadership is incapacitated, is absent, you still I could rely on those, team leaders to step up and run the squad if necessary, team leaders to step up and organize the teams if necessary. And sometimes it wasn't because of casualties, right? It was just because this is just half the armored element. This is like a support by fire element, and the assault element is somewhere else with the command team. And this is just light on command, right? Light on leadership. But this level of panic and inaction is more than light on leadership. This means there's no one in charge. There's no leadership happening here. And this is just how these failures go. This is the anatomy of a military failure. Anyway, guys, and for that, you should blame the commanders, right? Troops want to survive. Troops want to be well trained. They want to be really effective at their jobs. And it's your duty as a commander to ensure they have that training, right? If you've trained your unit right and you've resourced them properly, the decisions you will have to make in the thick of combat should be 2 or 3. Everything else should be automated by virtue of how deeply instilled the training is. I can tell you the only reason my unit survived, not the only reason my unit survived. My unit survived for a host of reasons, but there were instances in which my soldiers' automatic rehearsed responses absolutely flipped the script on some what should have been some pretty bad situations. And just that ability to just automatically, hey, get down, distance and direction, return fire, call it out, like clockwork. Didn't require me or the team leader or the squad leader, didn't require anybody to intervene because everybody knew right away what their role was. You do that, and that's how good war fighting is done, right? You train up your units, then you give your subordinate commanders their mission, and then they execute the mission using the training, using your intent and the resources you've provided them. And in a handful of key decisions, you, with your high-level information, intervene and make those calls. Anyway, that's the NATO way. It's obviously not the Russian way of war. That's all I had for you guys. Be sure to subscribe and check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks so much to our lieutenant and colonel tier patrons. You guys are really the ones who make this possible in the face of YouTube demonetizing lots of videos right and left. Anyway, thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one.